Good morning and welcome to this session that's hosted by Transmit Startups. And we've got the team from Journolink here joining us today to talk a little bit about the magical and mysterious world of public relations. So for those of us who might not be massively familiar with us, my name is Susie and I'm from Transmit Startups. We are startup specialists, so we help people to put together all of their plans and get themselves a business started and off the ground. Primarily, we are the #1 provider of the government startup loan scheme, which helps people to borrow up to £25,000 over 5 years at really affordable rates to get their business dreams kind of up and running properly. We also have loads and loads of different resources and guides that help walk you through the process of starting up your very own business so that nobody has to settle for a job they don't love, and everyone who has a dream to be their own boss has the ability and the resources that they need to go off and do that. A really interesting and important part of that is talking to customers and get your hands on potential customers and making sure that you're kind of in their sphere of interest, I guess. And that means that you need some kind of press and PR coverage for most businesses, not necessarily all, but I'm sure the guys are going to go into the ins and outs of exactly how that works. So we're joined this morning by Peter Ibbotson and Ted Kofi of Journolink, and they're going to take us through a chat. They're two very experienced people who know each other well. They're going to talk us through the Journolink sort of service and everything a startup needs to know about PR, which is primarily why we're all here. If you have a look at the bottom of your screen, you'll see that there's a Q&A function in there. Feel free to use that today as we go through. Peter and Tet will be keeping an eye on that and trying to answer questions as they go. We'll also pick up any outstanding questions and stuff at the end. As I said earlier on, we are recording this session, so hopefully, technology allowing, we'll be able to upload it for everyone to watch online on demand later on. Everything should be there for you. So let me tell you a little bit about who you'll be hearing from today. Tet Kofi and Peter Ibbotson represent both sides of PR. Tet is a working journalist with 40 years experience under his belt. Peter, on the other hand, has over 20 years experience, both representing businesses and working with them to get their messages into the media. Tet's going to tell you a bit more about how a journalist thinks. And as a former journalist myself, I can tell you it's far more like a normal human being than you might expect. And Peter's going to share with you the secrets of persuading a journalist to cover your story. So Tet and Peter, it's over to you.
Thanks, Susie. Thank you very much indeed. Tet, I'm going to let you start off as the journalist to give us the perspective and a little bit more about yourself.
Okay. I'm glad that I didn't go straight into journalism from after my master's. I actually started off as a market analyst for a consumer goods company, Johnson's Wax, Pledge, Us, Roll On, all that sort of stuff. But at the whole of the time, I was fascinated by what the advertising and communications departments did, and that's what I secretly yearned to do anyway. Later on, I lucked into it. I used to work for BBC World Service. I've worked for ITN, LBC, Colourful Radio, and various other companies. But my main shtick is journalism. So I can give you a sense of how it feels to be a journalist. Now, Peter, over to you. Talk about who you are for a moment.
Yeah, so what you're getting with Tet and myself is sort of both sides of the coin, as Susie said. Tet's the journalist, and I spend half my life defending businesses and talking to journalists, trying to get my messages over. And actually, about 20 years ago, I found myself facing Tet when he was a journalist, when I was working for one of the high street banks, desperately trying to get my messages over. And I learned a huge amount about how you manage the journalists and how you get your messages over. So that's really where I'm coming from. I'm just going to start with some words that Susie used just on the intro there, that most people think that PR is magical and mysterious were the words that Susie used. And yeah, they do. A lot of people we speak to think that, PR is a bit of a dark art. It's not for small businesses. It's too expensive. You need a big agency. and actually, I don't know how to handle it. And that's what we started Journolink off with. Tet and I started the business off about 6 years ago, very much around how do we help the smaller businesses who are trying to get their messages over and their profiles up? How do we help those businesses engage with the media, and how do we help the media talk to those businesses? Because again, as Susie said, you'd be amazed how normal journalists are, and they genuinely want to hear about your stories. So what we're trying to help share with you today is how we help you get your stories to the journalists, how you do that, what the techniques are, and how we can help you do that, but also understand from the journalist side where their head is and what they're looking for. So Tet, just share with us, what are you looking for from a journalist perspective?
Okay, so if I put it this way, when you start a business, the first thing you've got to do is to get a mutual understanding going between you and the people who are going to give you money. That's your customers. Mutual understanding. So you can't get that mutual understanding without establishing a relationship with your various audiences. Some of them will be investors, some of them will be customers, some of them will be associates, partners, and so on and so forth. PR is everything you do to create that mutual understanding. Now, the first thing that we need to bear in mind is that PR is a part of the huge marketing mix. Okay. Now, in the marketing mix, the bit that everybody knows and understands is advertising. You go to a medium, a platform, a publication, a broadcast station, you pay them your money, and they will put anything that you want to put out there exactly as you want it put out there. That's because you're paying for it. Oh, it has to be legal, of course. But then PR isn't about that. Now, what happens is that when you pay for an ad, everybody knows that you've paid for the ad. And what that does is that it affects the credibility of that message. If, however, you get your messages out there through the mouth, the words, the pictures, the references of an independent party, the credibility of your message becomes stellar. That's why everybody needs PR, because it is the medium by which you create that relationship between you and your audiences. Now, there's one kind of hidden word in what I've just said. Nothing is for nothing in this world, as you know, as businessmen. So when you get coverage through PR, it's because you have earned it. And you earn the coverage by providing the one thing that journos can't give: experience. Now, I know a little bit about almost everything on this planet, but I don't know enough about anything except for a field that I have specifically worked in to stand up a story or write a story. So actually, without you, I couldn't do my job. You're the one who's making the news. You're the one who's making the breakthroughs. You're the one who's making fantastic profits. You're the one who's getting the new insights. So the key about earning press coverage, media coverage of any kind, is share your insights. Now, I hope that as I'm telling you this, you're feeling fantastic already, because if there's one thing you have in spades, folks, it's insight. You're the one who did the worrying. You're the one who did the planning. You're the one who sourced your products. You're the one who set up your organization. You're the one who's planning how to respond to COVID. You're the one who's having to feel the punishment or the benefit of government policy. You're the one who's actually making, if Britain is great, you're the ones who's doing this for this country. So you're the ones with the insight. And so PR, what I need from you is those insights that I can write about and achieve my goal. Because, you know, I didn't become a journalist to be unread. I didn't become a journalist to be ignored. I didn't become a journalist so people kind of don't pay attention to me. You're the means by which I get attention and fulfill my role. Peter?
Yeah, so look, I'm going to pick up 3 things from this straight away. And then I'm going to come back to things like confidence, how you get your messages over, what you say, how you get your insights. The 3 pieces I want to pick up straight away from what Tet's just said for us to, really understand and get in our heads. And I had to learn this. I really had to learn this. First thing is it's got to be earned. All right. So this is the distinction between advertising that you pay for and you earning profile media coverage in the media. It's got to be earned. Nothing's for free. And I'll say that as a genuine steer to those of you that are starting up at really early stage. Plenty of stuff is free on the internet. Do spend 30, 40, 50 pounds a month maximum on getting your messages out and doing it properly, because you can spend a lot of time doing it not properly and getting absolutely nowhere. So yes, you need to earn it in the hard work you're going to do in putting the stories together, things like that. But do be willing to spend a few pounds on using the right tools to do that. So that's the first point. It's earned, really underline. You've got to earn it. And it's not just a matter of scribbling something on paper and saying to Tet the journalist, please promote my business. Second thing I want to pick up here is the distinction between the impact you get from advertising and from doing PR and getting journalists writing about you. Why is PR so important? One very simple reason. And that's that particularly after the pandemic, we've got used to other people saying things about products. And now 19 out of 20 of us actually make our buying decisions based on what independent people say about our products. Whenever you go on Amazon, when we all go on Amazon now to buy things, the first thing we do is look at reviews. We're not interested in what the owners of those products or their services, we're not interested in what they say about their products. What we're interested in is what other people are saying about them. And journalists are a key voice in that journey. So PR is very, very, very important to you getting your profile up and getting those independent comments coming through. Really, really important, more so than ever. Then the third thing I just want to focus on for a second is the relationship thing. So Tet's talked about the relationship between the journalist and the business. And I just want to position a couple of things in your head here. What the journalist is after are those insights. The journalist has two audiences. One's his boss. So Tet's worried about the guy who's going to pay his salary, right? So, don't think these journalists are magical people and, they live in a different world. They're not. They're just like you and I. They are worried about getting their salary paid every month. So they're worried about the boss. And what dictates them performing well in front of their boss is whether they are performing well to their audience. So this journalist sitting in front of you now, he wants a story that he knows people are going to open the paper or turn the radio on or turn the television on to watch and listen to him. He wants traction. He wants insights. He wants things that people recognize him as doing a good job for. So he's there for his own benefit to build his profile. You are there to build your profile. So this is your gig. This is you trying to get your messages over, but you've got to help the journalist do that. So you're coming from two slightly different angles here. The journalist has got a job. This is their career in doing this really well. Your side is getting your profile up. That's what you are trying to do. That's what PR is all about. PR is not about getting 2 lines in a local newspaper. It's about getting your web sales up. It's about getting your sales up, your web traffic up. It's about your profile and using the media and using the journalists to help you get that profile up. Now, I want to go on to talk about confidence. I want to go on about how you do it. I want to go on about the insights and what the story looks like. But Tet, share with us what you use this word insights. What are you really looking for when you say insights? And what are you looking for when I put my press release out with my story in? What are the key factors that are important to you?
Topicality. First of all, you've got to be relevant. And relevance is determined by what's going on in the world at that time. Right now, generally speaking, everybody has got something going on about COVID. Okay. Now, so that's topical. Any insights you can share about COVID will get a journalist's attention. But there are insights and there are insights. There are insights that'll make me want to jump out the window and just end it all. Goodbye, cruel world, that sort of thing. Actually, that sort of insight isn't great, because I don't want to kill my people, the people who read my stuff. I actually want to give them a pep up, firstly. Secondly, Peter wrote a fantastic article. I don't know if you can give him a reference for it later on, Peter, about how we can talk our way into a total recession, whether it's because of COVID, whether it's because of Brexit, whether it's because of whatever, okay? So topicality is important, but then within that, the positivity or the helpfulness of the insight is also fantastic. Now, usually a great story comes about when you're telling a good story. You have the protagonist, that's you. The protagonist is never a company. Nobody gives it, with the greatest of respect, nobody gives a tinker's cuss about your business. Nobody really cares about your business, but they care about you because you're human. Okay? So it starts off with a protagonist, which is you. Then it goes into a challenge that they've had. It could be product development, it could be staffing, it could be finance, it could be market conditions, it could be health issues, as we got with the pandemic and so on and so forth. That's the challenge. Now, set up a hero with a challenge facing him, work it out. Everybody wants to know, how did he solve that problem? That's storytelling. So, and it can be as trivial as you like or as profound as you like. If you can give us the solution that you're proposing, it's interesting. People will have a look. You might be able to inspire somebody. You might be able to kick off other thoughts in other people's heads and so on and so forth. But that's what an insight is. Topicality, inspirational ability. Now, there's one other thing. When I used to interview Peter, whenever he left the studio, you'd be surprised how many people would say this thing. He's all right, isn't he? These are journalists talking. It takes a lot to get that out of a journalist. That didn't mean it was because he'd swanned in the most beautiful clothes or that, you know, he had dazzled us all with his brightness and this and that. He had one thing, which is authenticity. You felt as if you could take him and whatever he was doing. And let me tell you this, at the time, it was very hard because he was batting for the bad guys. Peter was representing a bank in the middle of the crash, the banking crash, where the whole of society wanted people like him crucified. So it's actually open season. So the third point about insight is that you have to be true to your business, to your ethos, to your whatever it is that you're doing. People love that. And I can smell it from 20 miles away. And I want to share that. And I'll be saying after I finish, he's all right. It's not because it's got nothing to do with the way you look. It's got nothing to do with the clothes you're wearing. It's got nothing to do with your accent. It has a lot to do with you being, your business being what it is and nothing more or less. Cut the hype.
So look, three words there. And actually, as we're talking, don't forget, Susie said at the beginning, if you've got any questions, do just pop them in the Q&A at the bottom of the screen there, and we'll pick those up as we go. We'll leave a bit of time at the end to have a further Q&A piece, but if anything is just popping up, just pop it through so we don't forget it. Three words I'm going to pick up Tet's used there, and I'm just going to put the sort of business spin on those, taking a bit away from the journalist spin. Authenticity. Tet's just mentioned that, and the words Tet used were, I can smell authenticity at a mile away. Believe me, when I was sitting in front of a journalist, and even now when I do it, if those little hairs on the back of your neck aren't bristling, you're not doing it right. It's absolutely fine to have that buzz of nervousness about where's this going to take me. That's how it should be, and that's how you really drive up the authenticity. But on the authenticity, the thing that really makes you valuable is knowing, it's the confidence piece, it's knowing that you have something that journalist really needs. And all of us with businesses, we've got a huge amount of story behind us, examples behind us, experience behind us. We are doing something that the journalists aren't doing, and we're doing something that many of the readers aren't doing. So, have that confidence to share that, and that's what makes you authentic. Two other words: relevant, topical. I'm going to spend a bit of time on these. Topical is all about timing. And there are three things that you've really got to think about with your timing. So this is now really putting my business head on. And every time I'm working with a business now, I'm questioning this every time. Three things on timing. First bit of timing is when something's trending in the news. So if something's happening, there's something that's newsworthy, then the journalist is really wanting to cover it then, because people are naturally looking at the journalist. So what's trending in the news is really important, and it's topical and it's relevant. How do you find that out? Couple of pointers for you. One, have a look at a calendar. So one of the things we do on Journolink on the platform is provide you with a calendar of events that are coming up, government data that's coming out, news events that are coming up. We even put award programs in there. So I could tell you today, just looking at our calendar today, that today government data is coming out on employment numbers. And blow me down, at 7 o'clock this morning on Radio 5 Live and on Radio 4, what was the news? Employment numbers. So we're now at 5% in this country. I could tell you that 3 weeks ago, that today employment is what it's all about. So any business putting out a press release today or yesterday, for instance, that would be looking at employment, looking at Kickstart scheme, looking at furlough, looking at potential redundancies after furlough, today's the day when those stories are going to be covered. So calendar is important. The other thing to focus on, and this is a little bit knee-jerk, but the other thing to look at is what the papers said last night. So if you look at News 24 last night, when they're going through the papers, those headlines that are there, that's what journalists are going to be looking for today, and you can react to and respond to. So what's trending in the news? And a lot of that is spontaneous. That can be you responding to what's happening in the news and putting a brief comment out. Journalists are interested in your comments to that. The next bit links to that. So the second piece on timing is all about the journalists writing their stories. So Tet today will be sitting there looking at the news that's trending today, and will be writing a story on what's trending in the news, or he'll be writing a story in something that he's planned from a couple of weeks ago. So he's going to be writing something, and he needs comments from businesses. He'll be putting requests out through Twitter and out through platforms like Journolink. We do exactly this for a media request. I'm looking for a business to comment on something I'm writing now or a case study. So second thing to do on timing is link yourself in to those requests that are coming through. And you can do that. You can spend a pile of time on Twitter. We actually filter all those requests that are coming through on the Journolink platform. We tell you, we send an email to you saying a journalist is looking for this. You simply reply to that. That actually is the best time to hook a journalist, when they seriously need you for their article that they're writing right now, that they hope to get up to their editor before the end of the day. Then the third area, so first area is the trending news. Second area is when the journalist is really screaming out for you. Then the third area is when you have something to say. So this is your story. That's a lot harder to land with the journalist, because that's you making the news up that they don't know what's coming. And when you're doing your own news and putting your own story out, it's got to be really, really compelling. Now, I'm going to ask Tet in a second, what are those things that he's, how do we penetrate his head? How do we be the one that out of the 600 emails he gets every day, we're the headline that he sees? I'm going to ask him that in a second. But before I do that, on timing, we'll have businesses that are looking at the discussion now who've not yet started. And one of the questions going to be, when do I start? And I would say start at the very beginning. What you're talking here about is your profile. And a couple of things for your profile are get your name out there. So even if you've not hit your £1 million turnover yet, it doesn't matter. There'll be great demand right now, right today, from journalists to see a press release that comes out from the business that says, I've just started a business today in the pandemic, and I've had the guts to go out and do it. This is what I'm doing. This is why I'm doing it. Journalists will snap that up. That's really relevant right now. So have in your mind that profile piece, and on your timing, firstly, get your name out there, get what you're doing out there. Secondly, make sure you get your website, and make sure that whatever you put out there gets put on your website as well. We help you do that in Journolink again. We've got a media room function there where we do that for you. So profile, profile, profile. But back to you, Tet. Tell me, how do I be the press release that I send out today? How can I make that the one that you pick out from your 600 emails that you're going to get today?
Actually, the first thing is to understand that we were speaking with Susie, who's got a background in journalism as well, before, and a comment we kind of made to each other is that journalists are regular folk. They don't come from planet Zog. We're all genus Homo sapiens, just like you, just like you. First thing. Second thing, one size does not fit all. We all have different interests. We all work on or for different platforms. So you have to have a sense of the kind of journalists that chime with you. You can find this out by just Googling top 20 bloggers on training shoes or whatever. You will see who they are. You can follow them on Twitter. You can do a hashtag training shoes or hashtag training shoe design, hashtag everything that's going on in that arena will come to you. So we're all different and we all have our interests. Next thing, I'm coming to the question. I'm coming to answer the question. Next thing is, you don't need to be picked up by a million journalists. You only need to be picked up by one. And that is because I spend more of my time reading the work of other journalists than I spend looking for original news. Because normally, if you've made the cut and entered the fold with one journalist, it means there's something there. But usually, you will have missed, there'll be an angle on the story that is not being represented. Now, I might be interested, I might see that, and I'm like, geez, they got the wrong angle here. This is an even bigger story, and go for it there. So it is by osmosis that as you get picked up, it becomes a bit of a snowball rolling down a hill, so that you as a person, your business as an entity, it's a bit like an elephant. You know, the old fable of the elephant. Somebody thought it was a long rope because they had a hold of its tail. Somebody thought it was a tree trunk because they had a hold of its leg. Somebody thought it was a big wall because they had its belly, the side of the elephant. You're a multifaceted business, and so you will have multifaceted interests from different types of journalists. Now, the other thing is that it all depends on, how can I put it, the challenge that you're presenting in your story and the solution that you're bringing up. I'm a great believer in storytelling. Actually, this is why when you do your own PR, it's always sweeter to the journalist than when it comes through a professional PR consultant, which is not only more expensive, but it's secondhand news. When I talk to a business owner, I can feel their anxiety. I can feel their pride. I can feel their joy in what they do. I can feel their passion in what they do. Very difficult for that business owner to get a PR consultant to convey that. So these are the things that make me notice companies, businesses, and stories. Now, when it comes to headlines, I'm not one of those people. I've never crafted a super Kelly, you're fantastic, Celtic, you're atrocious kind of headline. Some people are real wordsmiths, okay? I can say this though, if you're writing headlines, try and run it past somebody else. somebody else, because multiple viewpoints always create more interesting headlines. But the most important thing is, don't set me up with a headline that goes nowhere, because I will remember you for all the wrong reasons. Okay. Imagine I'm on a copy deadline and I look at this fantastic headline. My feels go right up and I look at it and what's he writing about? It's got nothing to do with the headline. So that's the thing. Be creative about your headlines, but be accurate in what you convey, and always run it past a third party.
Okay, I'm just going to interrupt you on that one, on the headline, right?
Go on, Peter.
I'm a lot spinnier on this, right? So you're much more of that sort of traditional journalist piece. I'm a lot spinnier on this. And one of the questions that's come up, that's just come on the screen now, is how important is that headline? So making reference to the employment numbers this morning, BBC could easily have written latest unemployment figures released, but instead they led with big rise in redundancies among young people, right? That's a great example of just spinning that headline a little bit. Now look, Tet is right. Don't put a headline in there that's nothing to do with the underlying story, but make that as provocative and compelling as you possibly can. Why do I say that? What I've learned is you get about 3 seconds of a journalist's time in them spotting what this story is about, and then they'll move on to the next one. So you've got about 3 seconds to hook that journalist. Second thing to think about is, where's the journalist looking at the headline that you're sending through? They're on a tablet, they're looking at their laptop, they're looking at their desktop, they're looking at the mobile phone. You've got about 40 characters before that headline disappears into space. So make sure you land the compelling bit in about 40 characters. Let me give you a couple of examples, and it comes to the timing and the spinning it. And I said a few minutes ago, don't wait till you've turned over £1 million. If you're just starting today, there's a story. So there could be a florist that's opening in Gateshead today. So we could choose a headline that says florist opens in Gateshead. Honestly, no one cares unless it's Valentine's Day and I've forgotten to get the flowers for the other half. No one cares. That headline should be more like pandemic startup smells success. Right? So I've not talked necessarily about the florist, but what I've done is said to the journalist, not just in Gateshead, but across the country, I'm starting today, it's in the pandemic, and I'm going to be successful. That's the story. So your headline is really, really important in hooking the journalist. A lot of people say, I spent 10 minutes thinking about my headline, then I wrote the story. Write the story first. When you've written the story, come back and think, right, how am I going to hook this guy with my headline? Let me go on to relevance here as well. And then I'm going to go back to Tet on what stories, how do you look for a story to come through? I'm going to give you a couple of examples. Tet and I were doing a webinar like this about a month ago. And midway through the webinar, the screen went blank and we just heard somebody say, I have no idea what you're talking about. Now, that completely threw Tet. I have to say, it was the most delightful look on his face as he looked absolutely aghast at how could anybody say this. What had actually happened was somebody watching had forgotten to mute their mic and shouted at somebody in the house, I have no idea what you're talking about, which is probably to one of the kids. But the message that it left us on that webinar was, do you know what? Do people know what we're talking about? So don't assume when you're writing your story, your press release, your news, don't assume that your audience knows what you are talking about. You've got to treat them as people who actually don't know anything about what you're saying. And Tet said at the very beginning, your real value as a business is your experience. You know what you're talking about, your insights. Tet knows loads about lots of things, but not in depth. So as Tet said on the headline, check your story with somebody else. I used to call this the 12-year-old test. So if you can show your intended press release on your headline to the bored 12-year-old in your house who's playing on their PlayStation or whatever they're playing on, if you capture their attention, you've got the journalist. If you don't capture their attention, then rewrite it. The final thing I'm just going to say on the relevance and the story is, it's not necessarily just about your business. So it's not about florist opens in Gateshead. It's about pandemic startup smells success. It's the the underlying story that this journalist might be writing about, that you might be a great example for, but he's not writing about a florist opening in Gateshead. What he's writing about is startups in this difficult world. And let me just give you the sort of picture of that. One of the first clients that we had sign up to Journolink, I phoned up to ask, why have you signed up? I was really interested in those days. Why have you signed up? And he said, well, I've got the most boring product in the world. And if you can get me media coverage, then you're better than anybody else I've used. And I asked him what he did. And he said, we make drill bits. So we drilled down a little bit more into what the business did. And he said, they've got diamond tips on. And I'm thinking, well, that's a bit different than just straight drill bits. And then I said, do you export? Yeah, 20 countries. And I said, well, are you profitable? Yeah, we're profitable. We just celebrated 10 years profit. And then I said, what was your biggest disappointment throughout of this? And he said, we were turned down by Dragon's Den 10 years ago. That headline went broad scale with turned down by Dragon's Den, celebrated 10 years profits. It was nothing about drill bits. So that's the relevance of the story that you have to get over. So do think more laterally about not just what you do, but actually what is it you are doing that's beyond just the simple product that you make or service you provide. But Ted, over to you. You tell us now about the story. When you see a press release, what really captures you? So we got through your 600 emails. We're the one you're looking at. We got the headline right. What are you now looking for in that story?
Don't think that I'm going to replicate. I'm going to cut and paste your press release. I'd feel ashamed if I did, because it's almost a form of plagiarism. Your press release is supposed to paint a picture in my head based on which I can craft a story. So you don't have to write War and Peace. You don't have to write a 6,000 word epic. All I need is 5 W's and 1 H in a press release. Who did what, where, when, and why. Then the 1 H is how did he do that? Now, you don't need much more than 300 words to do that. You really don't. And if you've done it right, you'll get me to pick you up, ring you up. I'll start. That's why the press room feature on Journolink is so important. I'll start, first of all, by going to your website. I'll check your press room, see what you've done before. I'll check your Twitter feed. You know, I might look at you on Instagram. Then I'll ring you up, because you have enthused me by what was in there, by giving me the basic story. 1. 2, don't try and tell the story of how you were conceived, then born, then educated, then did this, then did that, then got married, then got divorced, then this. I really don't want to know. Each press release has to have one big idea that you're putting across. If you've got lots of big ideas to put across, write 4 press releases, different press releases. But focus on that idea. And if you know the audience you're going to, somebody's going to pick it up. And if one person picks it up, you're home free. Now, there's a colleague of ours here who was writing about the innovation grant, 92K Innovate grant, put a press release out. You know, there are lots of press releases that go out that X, Y, and Z has just hired a boffin from Cambridge. X, Y, and Z just received funding for this. X, Y, and Z just say won an award for so-and-so. And then you have to ask yourself the question, so what? The important thing, as Peter mentioned a few minutes ago, is the answer to the so what question. What does that mean for the business? What does that mean for the market? What does that mean for the current trend? What does that say about where we're going with the industry? If you've hired somebody new, why did you hire somebody with that kind of background? Now, what I'm interested in is you telling me that, well, the way this industry is going right now, we're going to require certain types of skills. You're starting to make a prediction. That is an insight. That, if I share, makes me look knowledgeable and insightful and informative and educational. And if you've got a smattering of humor in there, all the better, because you don't sound too up yourself. So these are the things: five W's, one H, and a really good headline that grabs my attention. Peter has his 12-year-old test. I go for the honesty test myself. But again, it's different. It's horses for courses. Now, there are two other things that can really capture me. Sometimes your story could actually be pants, but the picture you put with it leaves me on the floor. Okay. Sometimes I'll pick up your story because you got a drop dead gorgeous illustration. Fantastic pictures get you fantastic coverage. And you know what? Don't worry if it's just a picture caption that goes out. Picture captions are technically it's the lowest form of coverage you can get, but you can't do the picture caption without mentioning your company. And there are all kinds of problems with it, copyright and so on and so forth. So a picture caption is just a couple of lines with your fantastic illustration, and that's how it starts. Okay. Another thing that really grabs my attention: quotes. And if those quotes come from what I call elevated sources, so if you can get, say, your local MP to say something about your business, he is in the nature, you might not have voted for them, but a lot of people did. That's why he's the MP. That's why he's significant. There are lots of hashtags for him. People are watching the things that he said. So that's one. Somebody who's a leading player, a thought leader in your industry or your sector, in your professional grouping, a genuine social celebrity, whatever. My niece has got an organic body care products company, and Jada Pinkett Smith picked it up, really liked it, and put it on her Instagram. It's gone absolutely bizarre. That's Will Smith's partner. It's gone absolutely ballistic. You see, so a good quote from the right person is also good. Don't underestimate yourself, because there is no greater expert in your business than you.
Can I just pick up a couple of things? Mark, just extending your question as well, that B Daily actually wanted paying for the coverage. You get this. You get it with bloggers as well. Yeah. I'd say my general
view. They're not journalists.
Yeah, they're not journalists. They've got a business there. But you'll make your own mind up here. So if you get a blogger or a journalist saying, look, I want £25 for posting that, or send me a free sample, make your own mind up if you want to do that.
They're actually influencers.
Yeah,
is what they're called.
Yeah, they're influencers, but it's probably not bad. It's not bad advertising as well, to be honest. It's probably cheaper advertising than you just throwing an advert out and hoping somebody picks that up and reads it, because it is an independent viewpoint. So, don't make your own mind up on that. But the key is, and the bit I want to pick up from what Tet's just said here is, the key is it's great to piggyback on someone else's news here. So if you're trying to get something out there that says, look, we've just taken on a third employee, nobody cares. If you're putting something out there that says government grant saved business, then they're going to start looking. They're starting looking for two reasons. One, they hate the government and they want to find out what the government's doing that's really helping SMEs and startups, things like that. But the other reason is that there'll be Google alerts set up by the journalist on anything that's government. So piggyback on the back of other people's names. Tet mentioned celebrities and things like that. Piggyback on those names. Be careful of the copyright, be careful of the slander, be careful of the libel. Don't see, I always used to work on the principle of, if I put something down, it lands me in prison, I shouldn't be putting it down. But as long as it's not going to land me in prison or land me in court, fine. leverage it, right? Leverage it. So, think about those Google alerts that are there that are going to entice the journalist to pick that up. Think about the construct. So Tet's just been talking about the construct there. We talked about the headline, and on Journolink on the platform, we have a template that helps you through with this. But just to rehearse that, the headline really, really key. Think about the hooks in there. Then your story. The story's got to be relevant. It's got to be different. It's got to have something new in there, insights in there. Think about your story. Then your quote. Now, your quote's really important. And I always used to work on the basis of, when I'm putting a quote out, what I'm trying to do is entice the journalist to use my words and get my brand in there. What you're trying to do throughout all of this is optimize your profile. You're trying to get your brand in print, online, because that's going to help your SEO, that's going to help your social following, that's going to help your web traffic. So your quote is the most likely thing that a journalist is going to pick up and use directly from whatever you're putting out. So think really carefully about that quote and the message that you want to land in that quote. But again, as Tet said, if you can get someone that's a local notoriety to give you a quote as well, then that's better still. And put 2 quotes in. That's absolutely fine. So headline, story, quote, then the all-important image, high res, and not your holiday snap. Try and get your brand in there discreetly, but not too obvious that the journalist will say, this is just advertising, I'm not going to do it. Then the final bit to put in here is your contact details. The number of times we get journalists getting in touch with us at Journolink saying, somebody's responded to one of my editorial requests, one of my media requests, and they've not given me contact details. So please, can you always remember to put your email address on, put your phone number down, and when you get the call, answer it. Because if you don't, then the journalist will immediately move on to the next person. I'll just finish off with Justin's just put a question on, is there a maximum amount of words for a headline? We limit it in Journolink at 200 characters. So we don't let you write War and Peace in your headline, but don't write War and Peace in your story either. First paragraph, what's it about? Second couple of paragraphs are, give me the detail of it. Then leave it to the journalist to pick up. They'll be in touch with you if they're interested. But back to the headline, we say maximum 200 characters, but try and get the real meat of your headline in the first 40 characters. When, again, on Journaling, one of the things we let you do before you release your press release, we give you a little button to press and preview, and we actually show you what that headline would look like on an iPhone, on a tablet, on your laptop, on Twitter. We actually let you schedule to go to your Twitter account at the same time as we put it out to the journalists, and we show you all that. So headline is quite important, and don't write it too long. Ted, give us some examples of the stories that have surprised you when you've been going through these, that have really hooked you. So the sort of stories, the sort of sectors that that have captured your interest that you've been going through.
One of the things that always grabs me, but again, here we go. Not all journos are the same. I am who I am. I am the ethnicity that I am. I am the age that I am, and it makes me unique. You see, all other journos are different, but I'm always grabbed by life stage stories. Life stage stories are those of the person who used to work for companies all her life, maybe fairly high profile corporate companies, and they've jacked it in and they're starting up a business. Okay, I'm always impressed by the stories about product development, new product ideas that are going to create value for the customers who are in the target audience. I'm always fascinated by anything that disrupts the current way of doing business, anything that stands the market on its head and sets the cat amongst the pigeons. All of those stories I find absolutely fascinating. Also, I find youth stories incredible, because younger people are very creative, very innovative in the way in which they do things. And to be honest with you, right now, I'm looking for something that's new, exciting, and fun. And those stories are not to be discounted. I'm finding stories by women of female entrepreneurship very, very, very encouraging. And not just encouraging, but inspirational. Because actually, what's surprising is that after the fact, a lot of men are beginning to find themselves in the situation women were, say, 10, 15 years ago. And I find that when you share women's stories, a lot more people can relate to them now than they could before. So these are, the things that really get me. And of course, anything that gives me a positive spin on surviving COVID as a business, as an individual, as a team, as a group is fascinating. That will almost guarantee you coverage. If you're telling me something new, some new tips and tricks for working remotely, for dealing with the financial impact, for dealing with the marketing impact, and so on, you're almost guaranteed to get covered.
So a couple of things. Questions come through on any differences between B2B and B2C media coverage. There's two angles to this. As far as you're concerned as a business, no, there's not, because what you're trying to do in your business is get your profile. So you're trying to get coverage which will enhance your social presence, will enhance your SEO, which will get people looking at your website. So you as a business, you're trying to get coverage. Where it is really important is where you're targeting. And there are two or three ways you can target your release. So really think about where your audience is. And we get a lot of questions about this, that, can I just send it to one journalist or 5 journalists or sector journalists? You can do your targeting one of 3 ways. You can go down to WH Smith's when they're open and go through all the magazines that are relevant to your sector or your geography. And you can look in the front cover and you can extract from there the editorial address to which you send press releases. You can do that. You create your own list. You can look at the journalists. So if you're looking at local coverage, you can look at the journalists that are writing in the local papers. And often they'll put their Twitter handles there. Sometimes they'll put their email addresses there. So compile your own list. Follow them on Twitter. You can direct message them. So that's one way you can target it. That's quite timely, but some businesses want to do that. Doesn't cost you any money, it's just costing you time. Second thing you can do is buy a list. So there are services out there. There's web services, internet-based services, where you can go in and you can buy a list of journalists in your sector or in your geography. You can do it through Journolink. We've got that service. So you can say, I'm interested in the health sector. Please can I have the list of journalists. That'll cost you 40 or 50 pounds. Well, anything from about 40, 50 pounds right the way up to 500 pounds if you use some of the expensive services. But on the Journolink side, 40, 50 pounds will give you a full list of the journalists. We drag that onto your own journalist list on the Journolink website, and all you need to do is press a button and it automatically goes to that list. You can do that. Third thing you can do is just rely on us to do it. So if you just need to press a button to say, I want to send a health journalist in the Northeast, we do all that for you. So in terms of B2B, B2C, think about where you want to influence. So if you're looking for a B2B audience, then there'll be certain titles that you want to focus on, and they're the trade titles. If you're looking at B2C, then you're looking at much more consumerist type journalists, local paper, and things like that. So think about your targeting, and that's actually quite important. One of the questions that came in was company history. Where can I put my company history? Again, and I'll get on actually as we draw to the close about the tools that you really need to be looking for here. But again, on Journolink, one of the things we do is we let you put your company history onto Journolink as a default piece here. And then every time we send a release out to a journalist, we link your company history into it, what you do, what you sent out in the past, what your Twitter feed is doing. So I just want to, let me just go through the tools you should be looking for, and then Tech can contribute to that. First, I would say you're looking for 5 key things to make sure that you've got in whatever platform that you're using. Firstly, have a line of sight to the calendar. So again, one of the things we found very, very useful in journaling, and I use this when I'm working with clients, I look into our calendar to see what's coming up, what news might be trending. And that really helps you to plan what your PR plan is going to be for the next 2 or 3 months. So calendar, have that lined up. Have a platform that helps you with those media requests, because the best time that you can engage with a journalist is when they want you, when they're asking for examples. So look for something that's got media requests in there. Third thing to look for is looking for an easy distribution tool, right? You don't want to be spending hours and hours and hours trying to work out where you've got to send this thing to and what the machinery is and what the technology is to send it. Choose a really simple, easy to use platform. There's 2 or 3 out there. Journolink is one of them. Have a look at Journolink, benchmark it against one of the other ones by all means, but a really easy to use distribution platform. Don't agonize over where I'm getting covered. You're much more interested in who is actually looking at what I'm putting out there. So we don't give you a service that says, this is where you've been covered and you've got 2 lines in the Times. What we do is give you the analytics that will tell you which titles you're looking at and which journalists are looking at you. That's much more valuable for you and not as expensive. So distribution is key. So firstly, the calendar. Secondly, the media request service. Thirdly, a distribution model. And then fourthly, a media room. We provide for you a media room. We help you set it up, bespoke it to your brand, your colors. We let you put your marketing collateral in there, your contact details in there. Then we give the URL to that. All you need to do, copy and paste that URL onto a new page on your website. Now you've got a dynamic media room on your website that journalists can see and that your customers can see. And we automatically update that every time you put anything through the platform. So they're the 4 key things that I would say. But Tet, how much do you use social media as well? Because I think that's relevant, and you should always link your PR to your social.
Okay. Well, the important thing about social media is social listening. And you can set up social listening relatively easy, especially on Twitter, by putting in the hashtag searches. You can if you use TweetDeck, which is my preferred platform, you can program in searches which under whatever hashtag you're under. If it's children's shoes or sports fitness or health or arts and crafts or whatever, when you come to your Twitter feed, you will find that everything that's going on in the world, plus its dog, on that subject is in that stream. That'll give you a very, very good idea of what's going on. You can do the same thing with searches on Instagram. You can do the same thing with searches on Facebook. You can do the same thing with searches on LinkedIn. So social media is really, really, really invaluable as a tool for finding out what's going on. This goes to you being topical and timely in the news that you put out. But there's one other thing which I couldn't finish this without mentioning. A lot of people are nervous when they come across journalists. You don't need to be at all. The only people that need to be nervous are people who are SPADs, that's special political advisors to government officers, because it's open season on them all the time, or people who used to represent big brands like NatWest, as Peter did back in the day in difficult financial climates. Now, what those people say can affect a move in the value of sterling. That's why they're under pressure. But you are all starting up smaller businesses, or your kind of early stage development with your businesses. You're the sort of person that actually most journalists are batting for. You're the sort of person that people want to champion. So when you're writing your press release, relax. Nobody's coming after you. No journalist wants to, quote unquote, do you in. No, not at all. Plus, I'm in broadcast media. If I make my people nervous, my guests nervous, I just don't get the best out of them. And if I don't get the best out of them, it ruins the program. So please relax. be confident, be aware that without you, journalists can't do their jobs, and have at it.
So, Susie, we're probably getting to our time, and I can see one or two participants now are clearing off to do the homeschooling and the French lessons and the geography lessons and all that. So let's forget. I just want to finish on, Sally put a final question up here. How do you get to be the go-to person for comments? Is it just relationships? Is tenacity, Sally? We see some businesses that put one press release out, didn't get the coverage they wanted, don't do it again. Stick at it, stick at it, stick at it, because it takes time to get your brand recognized and get your name recognized. So, stick at it, Sally, and keep doing it. But also follow the Twitter handles of those journalists that you want to influence. Comment on them periodically so they get to know your name. So stick at it and stick at it and stick at it. Susie, we've enjoyed that. I hope other people enjoyed it as well. We will be back when Transmit will have us back. And I know Susie will be sending out the link to the webinar we've done here together with a summary. We'll put a summary together a little bit later today and send it out to everybody as well. But Susie, over to you.
Thank you very much. Thank you both for a huge amount of insight, a lot of great reminders in there for even for those of us who feel like they have experience and they know things in this area, but tons and tons of stuff for people to take away who've never done this before. And I think the big message for me is that it's a two-directional relationship very much in these things. Journalists need stories to survive, to exist, to be able to be very good at their jobs. And that was definitely my experience. And we're a fantastic hotbed of great stories. So Transmit Startups, sort of our own media coverage tells us that. We know that what works is telling the stories of really interesting things that happen in amongst the startups that we work with. It's definitely out there to be had. So I've popped a link in the chat box here just so that you can have a look at the Journolink profile, which is part of Transmit Startups Marketplace. There's also a special discount on packages and pay-as-you-go services in there if you wanted to have a go at that. As Peter rightly said, we're going to send out information from this sort of afterwards and keep in touch with you. And I'm sure that we'll have Peter and Tet back to talk to us again another day. That was super helpful. Thank you both very much for your time today. Thank you to everyone who came along and joined us. We're hoping to put together some more of these. So if you've got any topics that you think are particularly interesting, or if you yourself think that you could share your knowledge and information with other startups, just get in touch with me, give me a shout and we'll have a chat. But for now, we'll let you go about your day and potentially your homeschooling and everything else that you need to do. It's been lovely to see so many people joining in. Thank you very much. And we will see you again soon. Bye for now.
Thanks, Susie.
Yeah. Thanks for having us. Bye.